This is John Quinn, and this is Law Disrupted. And we're talking about the development of associates at a big law firm, specifically at Quinn Emanuel, our law firm. And today we're talking to Matt Arrow, who's sort of a midterm associate. He's not a newbie, he's not a brand new lawyer. He's not a senior associate either, but he's been with us a couple of years now. And Matt, first, it's great to have this chance to chat with you, and I'm really interested in hearing your feedback about what it's like being a sort of a midterm associate at our firm.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, we work in the same office here in Los Angeles, and I guess you joined us during the pandemic or just before?
October 2021, so was kind of right in the middle of, I guess, the vaccine rollout and somewhat coming back into the office.
I'm not sure whether we've actually even met in person before, have we?
Maybe, but it would be like at an event or something like that. You know, it's not like we've had the opportunity to actually work.
That's the next thing I was going to ask, whether we'd work together. Because even if we hadn't met in person, we might have worked together. That's possible.
That is certainly true.
I'm now working with an associate, I think is in Atlanta, I'm not positive on a case. And another associate who's in New York. It's seamless, but we've never met in person.
Right, no, I don't think we've had the pleasure yet. Maybe this will spur.
I hope so. As I say, it's a pleasure to chat with you about your experience at our firm. So what's it been like now? You're not a newbie. You've gotten some experience as an associate at a big law firm. How's it been going for you?
I think well, and I certainly hope that others think well too. To some extent, it is like getting thrown in to the deep end of a pool where you're pretty sure you know how to swim, but you are also going to kind of learn how to do it while you're doing it. But then at this point now, I feel comfortable with a variety of things that I have now had a couple of opportunities to do. And so it's sort of like I'm ready to now take that next step and that next step. You know, maybe to keep going with the analogy or the metaphor, it's sort of like now I'm ready to actually like swim to the other side of the pool as well.
So you feel like you've made some progress since you were a first year? And tell us about that. What was it like being a first year at our firm? Was it intimidating? Did you feel like, you know, how am I going to ever learn how to do this? What's this all about? What was your state of mind, and what has your progress been?
I mean, sort of all of the above, as well as genuine like support along the way. I think this might be a misconception that some young going into law school people might have about big law firms, is that, you know, it's just going to be razor blades and like get cut up and grind all over the place. There are people here who have been in your shoes before, and while they want to see good work, quality work from you, they know that quality work comes from supporting you in the process and getting you to that point. So I mean, while the first so long, it can feel daunting. It's suddenly you're working for some of the biggest clients in the world who have large dollar figures at stake and have a lot on the line, really. At the same time, though, you come in, you have some skills. People know how to foster those skills, and then show you basically how you can then contribute in each little step along the way. And so I'm somewhere on that track at this point.
Well, I mean, you make it sound, it sounds like your experience has been overall really good, but I mean, have there been moments where you thought maybe too much was expected of you? You're asked to do something you felt like you weren't really prepared to do. Or maybe you got some criticism that you thought was unfair. I mean, you can tell me. I mean, we're not looking just to necessarily paint a totally positive picture here. We want honest feedback. Tell us, have there been moments where you kind of struggled?
Almost anything you do, with the exception of maybe just kind of menial research or something like that, is something new. It is something that you have not done before, and there's something on the line too. Again, these are actual clients, real world problems. And so if you stop and think about it a little bit, it can just feel daunting and overwhelming just by being even a simple thing as, can you write a motion to dismiss? Right. You know, that can then feel...
This first time somebody asks you that, and if you haven't seen one...
Yeah, I mean, your first question is, what does this look like? You know, what? I mean, I had clerked, so I did see motions come in, but for me, I can actually remember that first one I got was asked, can you write a motion to dismiss? Okay, I've seen a motion to dismiss before because I clerked. I should be able to do this. Then it occurs to me, I clerked in the Northern District of Texas, not the Central District of California. Are there differences to how they're supposed to be doing it?
Yeah, in Texas, they put snake oil on it.
Right, exactly, and it comes delivered in a cowboy hat. So like those, you just immediately realize there are so many questions that you have, and so yeah, it is a little bit daunting to have those questions suddenly they're on your plate, and you realize you're the lawyer. Like the client
It's
is
your
hired
responsibility. One of the things we worry about is mentoring and training in the pandemic and post-pandemic world where we have a work from anywhere policy. I mean, the way I learned, and most of us learned really, was being in the office. I mean, I shared an office with a senior associate when I started out at a big law firm. I could hear how that person spoke on the phone to clients, how they comported themselves. There were the water cooler conversations. It was easy to bump into people and get some guidance. I mean, that must be harder in the environment that we're in now.
I would agree with that. All that requires, though, I think, is a little bit of adaptation. I mean, this is the world we're in now. And so, where you described like a water cooler conversation, I get that. There are then ways to somewhat replicate that or replicate the benefit of a water cooler conversation through our much quicker remote communications technologies. I mean, it's about getting familiar with what is at your disposal in the same way that when you were first starting, what was at your disposal was the water cooler. Now what we have at our disposal, we have Zoom, we have Slack, we have just regular old email and stuff like that. These are tools at our disposal that make what can potentially be an isolating experience still feel like a mentoring.
So how do you get that? I mean, if you have questions, how do you get help?
I think there is now an appreciation and understanding that like I can just email someone, even a very senior person on a case, and say like, I have this question, are you available to discuss? To some extent, that also perhaps avoids the sort of surprise of knock on the door and they're not able to talk, they're on the phone or something like that. You can just email and you can get a response when they're ready. And there's an acceptance that like we need to make time available for that. At least that's been my experience here, is that a recognition that that's how we need to start doing things if we're going to be on this remote posture, which has plenty of its own benefits. And so, with those benefits, find sort of new ways of going about things, and that's how I've seen it so far.
It seems like there's a lot of people who really appreciate and thrive in this work from anywhere environment. They really like the idea that you don't have to come into the office. Not even pre-pandemic, we didn't have any requirements of FaceTime at our firm, but there are people who I think feel liberated that they can stay home and work, or go someplace and work. And then there are other people who really miss the in-office experience, that they want to be around a bunch of people. And so we've also had to think about at the same time, how do we mentor and work with and promote people who are not in the office, but also think about how do we make that in-office experience more attractive to people who want to be in the office. Would you say that you're in one camp more than the other of those two?
I'm probably more in the camp of I like being in the office. I do like having in-person interactions. That said, though, the benefits of being able to instead of having to worry about fighting traffic to get into the office before I can even start work, being able to just start in on something is itself a benefit. Being able to, if I have some sort of obligations taking me somewhere else, but I still have the work in front of me, being able to do that. So I do prefer and I enjoy the in-person experience. The flexibility of being outside the office, I almost say it feels necessary at this point. It's become part of our workflow.
Right. Well, tell us about the professional experiences you've had. Have you been involved in a trial yet? Have you been involved in depositions? What kinds of things, other than writing motions to dismiss,
Right.
Have you been involved in?
I have yet to be in a trial, though I have arbitration hearings coming up in a couple of months, which I'm excited to be a part of, which I somewhat view that as very similar to a trial experience, their evidentiary hearings, their things like that. So that's something I'm looking forward to. I have now second chaired probably 30 depositions. These are depositions.
That's a lot of depositions.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a couple of large price fixing cases that mean a lot of depositions and a lot of preparing for those depositions. So,
by the 18th second chair, did you didn't raise your hand and say, "I think I've seen enough of this. I can do it myself"?
it was talked about whether it was time to bring me in to do the. Ultimately, there were some more senior associates who wanted to get those opportunities as well, and I certainly appreciated that they still gave me the opportunity to be there and like to watch. I mean, with every one of them, I learned something, and so when it does come time for my first deposition, I think each one of those that I've second chaired will. Not going to say it's going to make it a seamless deposition. I think anyone's first deposition is somewhere between a train wreck and what they're looking for.
Make sure they swear the witness.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that my word, that would be quite a start.
So, what are there particular things in your career and your development that you're looking forward to now?
So with this arbitration coming up, and then with what I think is the next stage of my progression, which is to start actually taking the depositions and maybe even taking witnesses, I've gone from I think about the facts we're trying to develop, the case we're trying to put on, outside of actually putting on itself. Now it's that transition to actually building it as the person rather than an observer who has sort of the background knowledge in mind. That's, I think, the next exciting step. For me, that I hope is around the corner here.
So far, has it turned out to be pretty much what you thought it would be when you first started at the firm, or a little bit different?
For the most part, yes. I mean, I come from a family of lawyers. Both of my parents are lawyers. They worked in big law firms, so they somewhat gave me a little bit of a rundown of what it was going to be like and the kind of assignments I would get. I will say, and this might be an idiosyncratic feature of this firm, is that I have had more what I would call substantive experiences than I think a fair amount of my friends who are at other larger law firms.
What do you mean by substantive experiences?
So, for example, my first assignment here at the firm was that motion to dismiss. I had somewhat thought that my first assignment would be research this facet of what will eventually become a motion to dismiss. No, for me,
caption and all.
Yeah, exactly. It was here's the complaint. We want to dismiss this complaint, and come up with the arguments. And so that was an experience that I'm not sure others in their first day at the firm at other firms would get. So that's something I think is a bit different here.
Well, you paint a pretty rosy picture. Surely there's some things we could do better. Surely there's some moments where you feel like the firm could have done better in supporting you, or fill in the blank. Some disappointments. I mean, we can hear it all, warts and all.
So I think the process of figuring out how mentoring works, how development works in the post-COVID era is itself kind of building the ship as we're doing it. And so there have been times where it feels potentially isolating. It feels like before I really felt comfortable just sending that email saying, I need to talk about something. Do you have time? It can feel like you're somewhat just pedaling away on the stationary
by yourself,
bike or something like that.
In a room. And does anybody know I'm here?
That is what is a work in progress, something that I think is developing nicely. But certainly I felt that.
Well, we appreciate that feedback. I have no doubt we can do better in that regard. So looking forward, this business of being an associate in a law firm, some people come because, it seemed like you can go to law school and then become a lawyer, keep your options open. Who knows, I might go to the government, I might go in-house, I might become a journalist, or, as in the case of at least one of our associates, become a psychotherapist. How's it looking like for you? How do you think about, your parents are both lawyers, so I'm guessing maybe you've always thought that's a possibility, I'm going to have a career as a lawyer. How do you think about that now? How do you think about the possibility of becoming a partner in the firm, this unknown thing, which is going to be in the hands of other people.
Yeah, so sort of taking all the way back to step one, both my parents being lawyers, I was convinced I was never going to be a lawyer. I saw what they did and thought, this is miserable. And then I took some pre-law classes in law school, before law school, just because, and it turns out I really enjoyed it. And
you couldn't get away from it.
It
turned out it was unavoidable after all.
Exactly. I didn't fall very far from the tree there. Why, coming into a big law firm like this to start, that was mainly driven by I wanted to learn how to do law, how to be a lawyer at the highest level. And the counsel from my parents was, well, you got to go to a big law firm. You got to go to a place where they're dealing with the highest stakes, where precision is expected, where the smartest people are hashing and rehashing arguments to make sure that it is refined just the way it should be. So that's what then drew me there. As far as then future, I think something that the first couple of years here at the firm, and I imagine this is the case with a lot of junior associates as I'm now transitioning into mid, is that you somewhat narrow your gaze a bit to how do I become a really good lawyer? I'm now exposed to this is what the practice looks like. This is all that goes into it. Every day I'm finding out, wait, we have to think about this issue. We have to think about that. Here's a client relation thing, something like that. So then it becomes, okay, how do I take each day, what sorts of things can I learn to become a better lawyer? Where that then takes me down the road, partnership, if so granted, is certainly a thought, a hope. But it right now, it largely is like just trying to be as good a lawyer as I can be, serve the clients as well as I can, and generally try not to make anyone mad along the way.
Well, it sounds like you're learning a lot.
I think so. I feel I am leagues ahead of where I was when I first started. Just having a feel for what you need to do every day as a lawyer. So I would agree.
Well, Matt, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Thanks for everything you do for our firm and for our clients.
Thank you for having me.
This is John Quinn, and this has been Law Disrupted.